So our first expression is tilde be, or we might read this as not be, since the tilde stands for not. And so in English it would be, and we'll go with the exact translation that's on page 4. So it is not the case that snow is white. Next we have B, wedge, A, or we might read that as B or A, since the wedge stands for or. And our translation will be either snow is white or the bird is red. And then the third one, A or not B, or A wedge tilde B. And so this will be either the bird is red or snow is not white. Okay, good. Now next, I'd like you to do the same for these three expressions. Take a minute, pause the video, and translate them into English. Okay, so the first one is A ampersand B. And since the ampersand stands for and, this will be both the bird is red and snow is white. Next we have a arrow B. And the arrow, as it says on page 4, stands for if then. That is a conditional statement. And so we could read this as a partial translation, if A, then B. And in English, period. If the bird is red, then snow is white. And then third, we have a double arrow B, or what we sometimes call the biconditional. And if we were to do a partial translation again, this would be A if and only if B. So in English, the bird is red if and only if snow is white. So here we have the, when we're writing this out, translating it, the A statement, or the first letter, comes before the if and only if, and the B statement, snow is white, comes after it. If and only if is not a expression or phrasing we use too often in English, but it's very important in propositional logic, as we'll see. Okay, next I want to translate these two expressions, which, when we're translating them into English, we want to make sure that we have each one as precise as possible. And as you're doing this, you'll be able to see that it's much easier to be precise in our formal language. And actually, before we even do the translation, it's useful just to take a second and see what we have here. So this one is, we have the tilde on the outside, and then in parentheses A and B. So basically what we're saying, this whole thing, A and B, is not the case. Now up here, what we have is, again, another expression with an ampersand in it, but the tilde, the not, only applies to the A. So only the A itself is being negated, and then B is just as it is. So to translate the first one would be both the bird is not red and snow is white. And here, instead of using the it is not the case that, I've just used not, which is an acceptable substitution. Down here, it actually will work better to use the it's not the case that. So we'll start with that. Okay, so we have, it is not the case that both the bird is red and snow is white. And so again, this is a pretty good way of phrasing the idea that this whole thing here is not the case, is not true, or has been negated. So for when we're doing a translation like this, we just want to make sure that we attach the not where it belongs. Okay, so here are two more expressions that I want to translate. In fact, why don't you pause the video and try to translate them yourselves, and then I'll go over the answer. Okay, so for both of these, we have a conditional statement. That is, we have the arrow, so if then is what we're doing here. And again, in this case, we can see that the tilde, the not, applies to the whole expression that we have here, if A then B. Whereas in this case, the tilde only applies to the A. So we're only negating this sentence here. So our first one is going to be if, what is A again? The bird. And our second one is going to be it is not the case that if the bird is red, then snow is white. So just notice for our first one, we start with the if. We start with the if and then get the not inside. In this case again, we have it in our A sentence. And in our second one, we have the negation. In this case, it is not the case before we have the if, because we want this whole thing to be one unit, A arrow B, and so that's what we have, and we just have the negation tacked on at the beginning.